Welcome to Conversations Here and Now. My name is Naresh. Today is the 9th of June. Thank you so much for being here with me. A common financial trap that many people fall into after saving their first $10,000 is what some financial educators call the false sense of security trap. I bet a lot of you haven't heard that, so let's go over this, okay? Here's how it works. Point number one. You've saved your first $10,000. You're feeling great. Okay, you start feeling wealthier than you really are. You look at your balance in the account. You go check the account. Wow, $10,000, $11,000. Wow, amazing. So having $10,000 in the bank is a significant achievement, especially if you've never had that much cash before and you worked hard to save it. The problem, though, is that people often begin to think at that point, oh, this is great. I'm doing great financially now. I can afford a few splurges now. I don't need to worry about, uh, I don't need to worry as much anymore because I've got this $10,000 sitting in the bank account, right? But in reality, 10,000 can disappear really quickly if you're faced with job loss. How many months will your $10,000 last if you're no longer employed? You still have to pay for all your bills. Some major car repair, something major goes in the car, like transmission or a major engine problem, could be $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. You see, it starts disappearing. Major home repairs, the roof needs to be replaced or something like that. Furnace needs to be replaced. Fridge, stove, washer, dryer, dishwasher, things break down, right? Medical expenses can come up. We're lucky enough in Canada that most medical expenses are covered, but there are some that are not covered, right? And other family emergencies can come up where you need big time money. So the 10,000 goes just like that. And before you know, it starts to go right down. Okay. So this feeling of being wealthier than you really are can disappear pretty quickly. Point number two is the money stops growing. Many people save $10,000 and then stop focusing completely on increasing that net worth. You can't stop at $10,000. They reach a psychological milestone and become comfortable. Just sit there, let the money sit there. So instead of continuing to keep investing, instead of continuing to pay down all your debts, instead of continuing to build retirement savings and to build further for emergency fund, they simply maintain the same balance year after year. So that's why I always say, make sure you guys get a certified financial planner. Okay, I'm not a certified financial planner. I just give advice that I see, common sense advice from all my 63 years of being on this planet. So make sure you have a certified financial planner. Make sure if you don't have one, go to your bank. They have financial planners that will definitely help you. So they can help you. You got this $10,000, they can help you invest it without having to lock it in. So if you need it in an emergency, you can get to it almost right away, right? And it increases your 10,000 faster than it would if it were just sitting in the low interest savings account. You got to make sure you're paying down all your debt, right? I'm not talking about with this $10,000. I'm talking about with your own money every month. If you have a high interest debt, make sure you're paying that down, and keep building your retirement savings and put more money in for a rainy day fund as well, and any other things you might be thinking of spending on. Okay, so build retirement savings is a big one. Okay, and your certified financial planner or your bank financial planner can definitely help you with that. Okay, so point number three, this is important. Inflation quietly erodes purchasing power. So if the money is sitting in a very low interest account, inflation gradually reduces what that $10,000 can buy, right? A balance that feels substantial today, and $10,000 is a substantial amount of money, may have significantly less purchasing power in a decade from now. And that's because if you leave your money in a low interest account, that's really like 0.5% or maybe 1%, just a bare bones savings account, and your inflation every year runs at 3 to 4%, then that 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, that $10,000 will not buy as much as it would today. So it's really important to invest it properly in, in the stock market, and however it is that your certified financial planner can invest it in in ETF funds, index funds, low cost index funds, and ETF funds that can definitely pay back more than if the money was just sitting in the low interest savings account. So that's a critical part. Inflation is always there. People never pay attention to that. They just don't think about inflation, but it's eating away at your savings. Okay, so that's important. Point number 4, lifestyle creep. It starts when people see that they have $10,000 saved up. People often people often reward themselves for reaching that milestone. So they'll go out and buy a nicer car. I'm not saying they spend that 10,000. I'm just saying they'll just go out and buy a nicer car, thinking, "Oh man, I've saved 10,000. Now I don't need to save anymore. I'll just buy a nicer car, more expensive vacations." Treat themselves, right? Higher monthly spending. So the emergency funds, the emergency funds remain the same, 10,000. The money is instead going to these expenses. It's just instead of increasing that savings emergency $10,000. So your monthly expenses have now risen. Now the $10,000 covers fewer months of living costs than before. So now think about this. You have a nicer car, maybe you have car payments. You have more expensive vacations, you have spending money. Maybe you have, you put that on your credit card, you got to pay that off. So you're higher monthly spending now, okay? So that monthly spending will always happen, right? So that $10,000, if you lose your job tomorrow, that $10,000 has to cover that extra monthly spending, right? So don't have your monthly expenses rise. That's one of the worst things you can do once you have that $10,000, thinking, "Oh man, I'm set now. I don't need to worry about saving anymore. So I'll just go out and spend more." That's the biggest mistake you can make as well. So don't do that. That's a trap that you can fall into. Point number 5, it can create excessive risk aversion. So let me explain that. Another version of the trap is becoming overly protective of the money. Some people become so focused on never letting the balance drop below 10,000 that they totally avoid all investing, any career training, business opportunities, calculated steps that could improve their finances. The money becomes a comfortable blanket rather than a tool, right? So you've got this 10,000, as I've already said, you've got this 10,000 sitting there. You say, "Okay, I don't want anything to happen to it. It's got to stay at 10,000, right?" And it's in low interest savings account. So I'm not going to invest in it because I could maybe lose it. It could go down. If I, career training, if I use it to career train, like take courses that would get me a better job, and that gets me a raise, so they will not even do that. So any business opportunity that comes up that could make you money, so invest in, eventually you would have more than the 10,000. They won't even do that. And they take no risks whatsoever to improve their finances. So what do successful people do instead? They view the first 10,000 as an emergency fund foundation. It's a proof to them that they can save. So it's a starting point, not a finish line. So you keep that going. You don't just stop there. You keep that going. You use that money to make more money. As the old saying goes, it takes money to make more money, right? So if you let it just sit there in an account, it's not doing anything for you, right? So the real wealth building phase begins after reaching that first 10,000, because people continue to maintain an emergency fund of that $10,000. They invest regularly. They keep in savings, and some people even increase it more. They see, "Oh, I was able to save the 10,000. Now I'll work harder at saving the next 10,000." Okay. They try to increase their income in some way, shape, or form. Okay, they keep their lifestyle inflation under control, and that's one of the biggest, most important ones. Lifestyle inflation always happens when people think they've got more money than they actually do, and they increase their expenses. Okay, so for example, people get a raise, right? Let's say they get 3 or 4% raise. maybe 2.5% more is like it in today's economy. But anyways, they get a raise, and instead of saving that raise, they go out and start spending it. They increase their spending. As I said before, they buy a nicer car, they have more expensive vacations, higher monthly spending. So that's called, lifestyle inflation, lifestyle creep that begins always when a person gets. Instead, what you should be doing is putting that extra money, if you don't need it, if your expenses are still covered with the old income, then you should be putting that money into the savings. So your savings increase, right? So overall, the message here then is, you got to focus on growing your net worth rather than just cash balances, okay? Because that net worth is what's going to help you when you retire one day, okay? Yes, you'll have the cash balances for emergencies. That's great. You've set that up. But you got to increase your net worth. Use that money to increase your net worth, because when sooner or later, one day, you will get to 60, 65, or some point where you will retire and you will need the money. Okay. So you can use that money, and that's great. That's how you build your net worth, increase your net worth. So many people think that the challenge is getting to 10,000. Okay. In practice, in reality, the bigger challenge is avoiding the complacency that can come after reaching it. Right. So it's a fantastic, when you start from zero and you've gotten yourself to 10,000 through hard work. That's a really good accomplishment. But that's an accomplishment that shouldn't be rewarded by, higher expenses, etc., that kind of thing. That accomplishment can be made better if you, as I've said already, if you invest properly, you increase your income, you pay down your debts, and you build your retirement savings, And so that 10,000 can keep building, building, and building. So you're nicely set for your retirement. Okay, so that was my talk for today. Make sure, if you have young people in your life, and even grown-ups can fall into this trap, but especially young people fall into this trap, sit down and talk to them and let them know about the $10,000 trap, that false sense of security trap that young people can fall into. Make sure you let me know in the comments below if you've ever had that kind of moment in your life when you had the money and you thought, oh, okay, now I'm all set, now I can increase my expenses. Or how is it that you kept it going, when you had the 10,000 to make it into 20, then make it into 30, 40, and get it up to 100 or something like that? How did you do that? Please let me know in the comments below. How do you make sure that your savings keep increasing and they don't just stall out? Okay, I hope you liked the topic today. So if you did, please hit the like button. Doesn't cost you anything. Helps me out with a little bit with the algorithms. Please subscribe if you're not subscribed, and thank you very much for all my subscribers for subscribing. Please turn on your notifications and share it with some young people. It might help them out. Share it with people anyway. It might help them out. Okay? Thank you very much. I'll see you next week. Same place, same time, same channel. Take care.